I mean, we've already talked about this before. I don't know if you guys remember. We talked about body systems a while back, and we covered this. Part of what I said was true because we are going to talk about that, but we have already talked about the good stuff. Okay, so if you haven't already, make sure you get your agenda so you can write down the objective. The objective for today is students to be able to identify the main reproductive structures of flowering plants and describe their functions. Literally, the birds and the bees. Remember, that's your plant project is due on Friday. We have our multiple choice exam on Friday. We'll probably have our essay test on Thursday. So just like last exam, we'll have the essay first, and then the next day we'll have the multiple choice. Alrighty. I'll go ahead and put the link for Classic one more time into the chat box. It is posted on Teams, but now you've got it in both places. I know, Casey, it's a lot of testing back and forth, but body systems and plant systems are, they're relatively easy units. So on the one hand, you can think of this as a good way of bringing up your grade. On the other hand, it's way better to have two small tests than one giant test, I think, personally. But it's also why I have a plant project, so it can kind of balance it out in the event that you're not a good test taker, like me. Okay, let's go ahead and get to our do now. I think at this point you know what your schedule is because we're at the last class of the day. So I'll give you all a few minutes, maybe just a couple. Yeah. So give me a thumbs up in the chat box when you have finished your do now. So you're clicking on the link, head into the class kick, make sure you put your name and give me a thumbs up when you got the do now completed. Thank you, Casey. Oh, okay, Missouri. That's all right. I'm sure she'd appreciate that. Okay, just a little bit longer, about 30 more seconds. Again, give me a thumbs up in the chat box when you have finished your do now. All righty, we're going to move on over to the class kick. You all should be there because you all did your do now. Thank you for letting me know that you completed it. Okay, so class kick. I'm going to go ahead and read the question just because I like it. It's a good question. Copper is a micronutrient that can be found in soil. Copper is important for reproductive growth in plants and plays an indirect role in chlorophyll production. Which statement correctly describes the interaction that occurs between the root and the shoot systems of plants to allow reproduction to occur? That's okay, just Janae. Can I get someone to knock out an incorrect response for me? Which one of these answer choices is incorrect? Again, looking for a wrong answer. Should I call out somebody? Would that be faster? How about, I think I saw Hamza come in. Hamza, you there?
Yeah, but I just joined.
Okay. Let's see, who else? Mazari, would you mind giving us an incorrect answer? F. Very good. Yeah. So, copper is produced in the roots when copper-containing compounds are hydrolyzed. Holy smoke. First sentence. Copper is a micronutrient that can be found in soil. So copper is not being produced. Copper is already there in the soil. So you get rid of F because copper is not being produced. Bam. Easy. Thank you, Mazari. Can somebody else knock out another answer choice for us? Oh, I'm sorry, Casey. I didn't say you said J. Would J be a wrong answer? Boop, boop. The shoot system transports copper to the roots after it is taken through stomata in the leaves. Wow. That sounds crazy wrong, right? So from what we know about plants, we got a leaf right here. Leaves are going to be carrying out photosynthesis, right? So if the leaves are carrying out photosynthesis, which is regulated by the stomata, right, letting in air, that sort of thing, it's saying that the leaf is going to take in something, and then it's going to go from the leaf down to the roots. That sounds wrong, right? From what we understand, things are being absorbed from the roots going up the plant to leaves. So J is wrong because it's kind of like totally wrong. Shoots don't necessarily transport stuff down. Shoots are usually transporting stuff up. And roots are usually absorbing things from the water, from the ground. So that's why F and J are wrong. Okay, so that leaves us with G and H, 50-50. Anybody want to be bold? Take a
Isn't
strong
H
guess.
wrong?
Is H wrong? Why do you say that?
Well, because the shoot system isn't gonna store.
Okay, we'll take notes until I figure this out, because I don't know.
Isn't the roots gonna store and soak up all the nutrients?
Very good. Right? The shoot system stores copper for later use by the roots and the reproductive structures. So shoots are probably not storing a whole lot, right? The shoots are going to be where the photosynthesis takes place. If anything, the roots are probably going to be what's storing stuff. And as far as it being reserved for later use, that's more of like a fat thing. I don't think anything here implies that copper needs to be stored up for use, right? So that really is just with one answer, which is G. And there you go. Copper that is absorbed by the roots, so right, it's absorbed through the roots, is transported to reproductive tissues by the shoot system, which is what the shoot system does. It transports stuff. And there you go. So this is a question about roots and shoots. So even though it's talking about like copper and reproductive systems and blah, 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 really we're just talking about what do roots and shoots do? And they transport stuff, right? So the roots absorb things and then the shoots will transport them to where the plant needs it. And there you go. So B is the answer.
Sir,
Uh-huh.
my class kick's acting really weird. It's not letting me write anything or draw anything.
That's
And I
strange.
keep refreshing it, but it's just not working.
If you like, you can do what Gigi does, and you can just take notes, and you can fill it in later, or you can take a picture of those and turn that in.
Mr. Martinez, same thing for me. On mine, it doesn't let me write or type or do anything at all.
Oh, that's weird. Hmm. Is anybody else having that same trouble?
Me too, but I already said it in the chat box.
How strange. Same thing with Destiny, Kiki. That's weird. I don't know why it would do that. I guess I could try generating a new code. Let me try that. Okay. If you're having trouble with it, try a new code. I'll try it on my end too. So when I'm signing in as a student, just so y'all are aware. Oh, we might have to do this the old-fashioned way. Oh. I think you're gonna have to do it the old-fashioned way. Gigi's happy. Yeah, okay, so then this is how we're going to have to do it then. If it's not going to load, or for at least those of you who it's not loading for, you're going to have to take notes by hand and then submit a picture when we're finished. I know that's not optimal, but I'm not sure what's going on or why it's not working. But hopefully it continues to work for us. Okay, so there's the objective one more time. Okay. No. So this is just if you're having trouble with it, if it's not working, then you're going to have to do it this way. Again, not optimal, and I do apologize for that, but I'm not sure what's preventing it from working. So we'll just go ahead and keep going, and then everything should be fine. Yeah, it's hard to tell from type. Okay, let's keep on trucking. So for those of you who can see, can someone go ahead and read this black text for me over here on the right?
Mr. Reem.
Uh-huh.
So if our class cake doesn't load, we have to take notes.
Yeah, you're gonna have to do it by hand. I'm sorry.
Huh? If our class cake doesn't load, we take notes on paper.
If you want to, you can do digitally. Like you can open up a Google Doc and just do it there. That works too. But I think for people who are a little slower, the writing was more efficient. But it's going to be up to you. If it's easier for you to grab a piece of paper and just do it that way, then I encourage you to do that. If it's easier for you to go ahead and just open up a blank doc and do it that way, that works too.
Okay.
But yeah, somebody can. Can someone go ahead and read this black text for me over here on the right?
I can.
Thank you, Hamza.
Flowers produce gametes. Flowers attract animals that can pollinate the plant. If a zygote forms, the flower nourishes, it gives it food, and protects it until it becomes a seed.
Very good. Thank you so much. So when I mentioned the birds and the bees, that's what I meant. When we think of like reproductive structures, we're kind of human focused. So we think of like the vagina, the penis, whatever, stuff we talked about already. But when it comes to plants, that's going to be the flowering part, the really pretty part. That's going to be the sexual structures in the plant. So you peel back the petals and you'll find those reproductive structures. So a quick review, what is a gamete? Gametes are going to be sex cells. We also call them reproductive cells. Specifically, it's going to be like the sperm and the egg. Those are the gametes. So when it's talking about a zygote or fertilization, all that stuff, we're talking about the gametes specifically. Alrighty. You'll notice here inside the plant, once it's been fertilized, it produces that seed, same seed that you would see in an apple. So for us, whenever we're getting together, we make babies, right? Sperm and the egg for us equals baby. In a plant, sperm and the egg get together, they form a seed. Because think of it this way. Whenever we're having babies, we're trying to like make more of us, right? We're propagating our species. When it comes to plants, they make that seed will go off and make a whole new plant, right? So it's the same kind of thing. So plants make seeds, we make babies. All right. Keep on trucking. Here we have the female and male reproductive structures. This is just a real big slide to show you all the different organs there. It's important to notice that plants have both female and male reproductive structures. For the most part, plants are hermaphroditic. What that means, they're like hermaphrodites. They have both parts. Now, this can happen in the animal kingdom. There are some people who are born with both sets of genitals. Not super common, but not impossible. For the most part, though, plants are born with both. Now, typically, they don't self-fertilize, so you think, okay, well, they got both male and female parts. Wouldn't they just make more of themselves like clones? That's not usually how it happens. They have to have what's called cross-pollination. So a pollinator has to come by, collect some pollen, and go to another flower, and then it can become fertilized. That's not to say that self-fertilization doesn't happen. It's just not super frequent. Okay, so on the left, you'll notice that we have those purple female reproductive organs. We have the pistil, is what they're called too collectively. The pistil is made up of the stigma, the style, and the ovary. We'll get to more in depth here in a second. Then on the right, on the red, we have the male reproductive structures. That's going to be the stamen. Easy to remember, right? Men, male. That's going to be the anther, which has the pollen and the filament. Okay, so let's dig in deeper into the specifics of each one of these. So here we have the female parts of the flower. Can I get a volunteer to read this black text over here on the left for me, please? Who have I not heard from? I don't think I've heard from Casey yet today. Casey, would you mind reading for me?
I can read it. Okay. The pistil or carpel is the structure in the very center of the flower. It includes the stigma, style, and ovaries. The stigma equals the top part of the pistil where pollen lands, and style equals the long tube below the stigma, and then pollen travels down it to reach the ovaries. And ovaries are the bottom part of the pistil where female gametes or eggs are produced and stored.
Very good. Thank you, Casey. So you can see we have a pretty simplified diagram here of what we're looking at. So whenever you look at the flower, underneath the petals, you have the polleny stuff, but you also have this really kind of big structure here in the center, and that's what we're looking at. This is the pistil. If you think about it, if you turn it kind of on its side, it kind of looks a little bit like a cannon or a gun, so that might be an easy way for you to remember the pistil. If it were here in class having like an actual lab, I would encourage us to kind of dissect a flower. If you peel back the middle section here with the razor, you can see it looks pretty similar. You have the sticky stigma up top, you have that shaft, which is the style, going down into the ovary, and if you're real lucky, you'll be able to see what's called the ovules, which are like the kind of individual eggs that the plant has that are ready to be fertilized. So, we talked about the stigma, right? Why do you think the stigma would be sticky? Does anybody have any ideas why there would be a sticky stigma? So reach back over here, stigma. Stigma is the top part of the pistil where the pollen lands. So what is the advantage of having a sticky stigma? Very good, thank you. Because the pollen is landing there. So remember, plants are outside, right? We get the benefit of being inside and not having to worry about the elements for the most part. But plants are not that lucky usually. They got to kind of combat the elements. So if the stigma is sticky, it's able to hold on to that pollen a little bit better. So don't have to worry about losing it quite so easily. All right, very good. So this is going back to what we talked about a second ago. I want to make sure that everybody understands. What are we talking about when we talk about fertilization? What is fertilization? No. What is fertilization? So we've been talking about gametes, which are reproductive cells, What is fertilization then? Very good. Making a new organism, right? I like the way you phrase that. Essentially, when the sperm and the egg join. Now, for us, that's making a baby, right? Like I mentioned, when it comes to plants, that's them making a seed. Zygote is just a fancy word for the sperm and the egg together. And there you go. So fertilization, when the gametes fuse together, when they join together, they form a zygote, which will eventually become a seed. In us, that's going to be babies. In plants, it's going to be seeds. All right. Any questions about that? The whispering was Miss Duncan. She's just getting stuff for Miss Carpio. I'm in Carpio's room. The weird thing about the schedule is that we are transitioning. Your teachers are moving around. The students are staying in one place. Okay, then let's keep on trucking. We talked about the female parts. Now we're going to be talking about the male parts. So like I said, stay men, pretty easy to remember. Men, like man. So that's going to be the filament and the anther. And the anther, of course, is the part that makes the pollen. Now, based on what you see on the screen in front of you, what is pollen? Can I get a volunteer to read that for me, please?
I can.
Go for it.
Pollen, microscopic dust-like grains released by the male parts of flowers that contain male gametes.
Thank you, Hamza. So, pollen then is essentially male gametes, or reproductive cells. Reproductive cells. So not to get too graphic with you, but sperm, right, is what it is in humans. Pollen then is essentially the sperm of the flower. So it's the male reproductive cell is what the pollen is. So remember, it takes two to make a baby. So you got the sperm, which is half the DNA. The egg has half the DNA. Sperm plus egg equals a zygote. You know, half and a half makes a whole. So the pollen then is going to be the male part. So the female part are going to be the eggs. The pollen is going to be the male part. Alrighty. Any questions there? No? All right, let's keep on trucking. This one's going to be a little bit difficult with all the kind of trouble we've been having with connectivity. So here we already have it finished. I went ahead and just did it already. I'll walk you through it. Remember that the plant is outside, so the petals are really there to kind of protect the organs. So think of it as kind of like underwear, right? Underwear kind of keeps our genitals shielded from the outside world because you don't know what kind of radiation or chemicals or dangers are out there. So the petals are the same thing. The petals are there to kind of keep everything nice and covered. The pistil, the female parts. So you got the sticky stigma, you got the shaft, is the style, and the ovary going all the way down here at the bottom where the ovules are. So those are the eggs. The stamen is going to be the male part. The anther has the pollen. The filament is what's holding up the anther. Underneath all this, you have the sepal. The sepal kind of holds everything in place. The receptacle, I think, holds eggs. I don't think I've ever seen receptacle or peduncle on the star, but you never know what they can throw at you. So I wanted you to see those words at least once to know that they are associated with the reproductive structures of plants. Alrighty, this was drag and drop. Not too hard. I think it's pretty simple. Okay. Okay. Pollination. Can I get another volunteer to read pollination over here, the text on the bottom?
I can read it.
Thank you, Mazari.
Wait, do you want me to read the full thing?
Yeah.
Okay, a pollen grain lands on the sticky stigma. The pollen travels down the style along tubes. The pollen reaches the ovary and the male gam- how do you say that again?
Gamete.
Gamete joins the female gamete to reproduce a zygote.
You got it.
This is called fertilization.
Very good. So I mentioned a second ago, fertilization is when the egg and sperm kind of come together. So here we see the pollen and the egg doing that. So pollination then is referring to the movement of that pollen from one plant to another and then down the style towards the ovary. So pollinators, we've heard about pollinators before. I'm pretty sure you talked about it when you were in like middle school, right? Does anybody think they can give me a pretty good definition of what a pollinator is? You could probably do it in like 3 words.
Wait, what was the question?
What are pollinators? Pollinators are organisms that move pollen. I was going to say they move pollen, but I like organisms that move pollen better. So notice here on this picture with this insect, you see that it has like hairs, and on those hairs it has all these little tiny little particles. That's all the pollen. So remember that flowers have certain kind of attractive scents, right? Like whenever we smell roses, we're like, oh, it smells nice, right? It's the same way for other animals and insects. They smell something attractive, they go towards it. Maybe they get a free meal, maybe they get some honey or some nectar. And in the process, they get all this pollen stuck to them. Then when they fly to the next flower, the pollen from the one flower is able to pollinate or cross-pollinate with the flower that the bug joins to. So it's a way of spreading its DNA around. Now, for us, we like to have our DNA spread out because you don't want a limited gene pool. We'll talk about it more in our next unit. We talk about genetics. But whenever you have a very limited pool to draw from, there's a high chance of like genetic mutation that is unfavorable. Like you're going to get like a bunch of diseases. So you might have noticed in like some royal lines, there's like all these horrible, terrible things happening. That's because they're all having babies with their cousins or their sisters or their brothers, whatever. So it's a very limited gene pool. What you want is you want to have a whole lot of different DNA because that's what leads to these new adaptions, right? If you get these new genes coming in, maybe they're advantageous. If they're advantageous traits, then you'll have a chance to pass them on to the next generation, and then you'll see a shift in the population over time. That's evolution, right? So you want to make sure that you have new genes all the time. That's a great way to make sure that your species will survive. And that's why plants have these pollinators so that they can have new genes. Sweet Home Alabama. Yes, I think I know what you're referring to. Okay, let's keep on going. Oops, don't look at that. Don't cheat. So what I want you to do here is I want you to describe the process of pollination and fertilization in plants. So if you don't have access to ClassKick, like I said, go ahead and write this down wherever you're doing it, either on an online document or on a piece of paper. So take a minute. I want to see the connection between pollination and fertilization. If you need some help, you can always go back, and of course there is this helpful diagram here. So I'm going to give you a minute to do it. That's about a minute. So I hope that what you noticed was something like this. Pollination is when animals can transport pollen to a new plant. I guess I don't want to say animals, I want to say pollinators. Can transport pollen to a new plant. Fertilization is when the pollen fertilizes the egg to make a seed. So there you go. Like I mentioned, some plants can self-fertilize, but that's kind of a limiting gene pool. Some of those flowers have something called alteration of generation, which means that they can recombine their own DNA, which is really, really fascinating. But to keep it simple, you want to have new genes coming in so that you can better adapt to the world around you. So pollination is when the pollen comes to the new plant. Fertilization then is when that pollen finds the ovary and they can make a seed. Alrighty? Now, flowers and its colors. Can I get someone to read this little sentence right here for me underneath flowers?
I can read it if you want me to.
Sure, Mazari, thank you.
Bright petals and nectar attract insects and other animals which can pollinate flowers.
Very good. So you'll notice here that this hummingbird is kind of getting into this plant. What kind of ecological relationship is being demonstrated in this picture? I'll give you a hint. We talked about it a while ago, but as a type of symbiosis. What type of symbiotic relationship do we see here? Remember, we had parasites. That was where one benefits and one is hurt. We
Is it
had
mutualism?
very good, Hamza. This is a mutualistic relationship or mutualism. Now, mutualism is when both organisms benefit. So the nectar that the flower is producing is kind of like honey, like it's a really sweet kind of liquid. So the organism, the pollinator, is getting kind of like a free meal, it's getting a snack. The flower then is getting pollinated because maybe this hummingbird is bringing pollen from another flower, or it's going to take its own pollen and take it to another flower. So this is the way that it's able to send away its genes to a new organism. The flowers are very attractive, so they can get attention. You'll notice that this one we actually saw in a video a while back. This is actually to attract like wasps and hornets. Kind of looks like a female wasp, I think, or something. There's something about the hormones or the way it looks that makes the male think that it's a female ready to mate. And so it kind of gets in there thinking that it's going to get, a chance to reproduce, but really it's just a flower. So it's able to get in there. It gets a free meal anyway, takes some pollen, goes to another one, and further helps that plant pollinate. But yeah, this is a mutualistic relationship. So plants rely on animals, and animals kind of rely on plants. Because not only does the animal get a free meal out of it, if the plant survives, there's a better chance that there's going to be more oxygen in that area, which is what the animal and plant needs in order to live. Mutualism. Okay, any questions about that? Pretty simple. Very good, Gigi. And Casey, I would say that the organism does benefit through this process. Like if the flower was just there and it didn't do anything, then yeah, then it'd be commensalism. But because the flower is producing something that the animal wants and is rewarded for it, then I would say that's mutual. Alrighty. Now this one, a little bit long. Is any brave souls want to help out with this? How the seeds are spread?
I can read it.
Thank you, Casey.
Okay. So, wind. Some seeds, like dandelion seeds, are designed to be carried by wind. Water. Some seeds, like coconuts, can float in water to other locations. Burrs. Some seeds can get stuck in an animal's fur and carried to a different location. Fruit. Seeds in the middle of fruit can be eaten by an animal, digested, and dropped in other locations. Some seeds, like acorns, can be collected and buried by animals who might never come back.
Very good.
And is that it?
That's it. So when we're talking about seed dispersal, remember that the plants can't get around. They rely on these pollinators so that they can get their pollen around. The same thing happens with their seeds. So let's say that the pollen gets in there, a seed is made, they make some fruit. I mean, what's going to happen? The fruit is going to fall down to the ground, right? And so depending on what type of plant is being produced, the seeds don't really have an avenue of getting around, right? The seeds don't sprout legs and walk around. They're kind of at the mercy of whatever's around them. So you'll notice here with the wind, we have dandelions. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen dandelions. You've probably noticed them in your backyard or around. They are designed to be carried on the wind. So those wispy little things on the ends are kind of like a parachute. They catch the wind and they're able to kind of move. So these things are seeds. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but you're supposed to like not run them over with a lawnmower because if you mow them over, you're not really getting the seeds. If anything, you're just spreading the seeds around. So whenever you mow them with a lawnmower, you just end up having a lot more of the dandelions around. But yeah, these are designed, like we thought with evolution, right? These are adaptations that the dandelion has evolved in order to survive in this environment. You see them around here because we live in like a grassland, right? Like there's lots of hills in this area. So there's lots of wind, there's lots of grass. So the wind picks up the dandelion seeds and it spreads it wherever. It's very beneficial. Yeah, people even eat dandelion, which I think is strange, but not super strange. I mean, we also eat like sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds. We season our food with like sesame seeds. If you want to get real gross, I mean, we're essentially flavoring our food with plant babies. Like we're taking their babies and we're eating them. Water. Some seeds, like coconuts, can float in water. So the coconut is designed to be what's called buoyant, so it won't sink. It has a little bit of air in there that keeps it able to float. If the coconut is able to find a place where it can grow and not rot, it'll grow into a new coconut tree. So I don't know if you've ever seen this before. I think that it's not an image that's commonly known. So I wanted to go ahead and show you that this is what happens to a coconut if it's allowed to grow in an area that's dry enough to support a tree. I think she was, Gigi. Burrs. When I was growing up, we had what were called stickers. Right? I don't know if you've ever seen one of these before. So these are not just like pests for no reason. The reason that these exist are because inside that burr, there's a seed. So let's say that the animal's walking around, it gets it stuck in its leg or in its skin, or for us, sometimes in our shoes. We're literally transporting the seed to a new place. Those really sharp tips are able to stick into things and be transported to a different place. So then when you pick them out and you put them on the ground, you're planting the seed. So those are burrs, but I grew up calling them stickers. And then last but not least are fruit. So, like I mentioned a second ago, when we're eating fruit babies, take the apple, for example, right? Inside the apple, you have the apple seeds. Most animals, like cows and goats, don't really have the fingers or the dexterity to like pick out the seeds, right? So what happens are the animal eats the whole thing. The seeds, contrary to popular belief, which you might have heard growing up as a kid, the seeds don't grow into a plant inside your stomach. The acid, more or less, keeps that from happening. But the seeds are able to survive the digestive tract. And so what happens are the animals poop them out, and usually they poop and pee at the same time. So it poops out the seed, and then it pees on the seed. So now it's got like the optimal environment to grow, right? It's got the nutrients from the poop, it's got some water from the urine, and boom, it starts growing. It can take root pretty quickly. Let's see, Mazari, so I'm gonna go. I'm home with too full of them. Yeah, I know what you mean, Mazari. They're super annoying. That's true. Casey says if you carve a pumpkin, you're destroying Cinderella's carriage. I like to think of it more as like even more graphic than that. You're literally cutting up. Like think of like the fruit as like a uterus or like an ovary, right? You're literally cutting into this reproductive structure and yanking out all of the eggs and seeds of any future generations. You're like, I'm going to take your organ, your reproductive organ, I'm going to use it as decoration. I'm just going to rip out all the future of your kind. It's pretty crazy. And then some seeds, like acorns, can be collected and buried by animals who might never come back. So let's say, this is also a grim example. Let's say that there's a squirrel. Squirrel buries a bunch of acorns, and the squirrel goes out and gets hit by a car, right? That squirrel's never going to come back. So those acorns have now been planted, and they can grow into a new acorn tree. Usually what happens is the squirrel would come back, it would dig it back up and take it where it needs to go. But, I mean, the point is, the squirrels act as a kind of like a seed dispersal mechanism. And since we're talking about disgusting things, I wanted to show you, where is it? I think I might have gotten rid of it. Yeah. Look at this thing. This thing is called cucumber plant. It's disgusting. Look at how this thing gets rid of its seeds. It builds up like a pressure gradient, and so when it's ready, it literally like explodes out. Now, this cucumber is not edible cucumber. People in the past used to think that it was important because this is like a crazy seed delivery mechanism. And so they tried, I think, eating it, and they tried like I think using it as some kind of drug, and it killed a lot of people because it's slightly poisonous. But the reason it's persisted for so long is because look at how efficient that seed dispersal is. It's pretty much just shooting out, right? Like that's crazy, crazy. Yeah, plants are insane. Yeah, it does. Okay, so in what way are plants like viruses? Whoop. Plants need help to reproduce. Viruses need a host to reproduce. Plant seeds can spread like a disease. Right? Those are things that they kind of have in common. It's not necessarily a positive or a negative. It's just showing that, plants need us the same way that we need them. Okay? So remember, viruses are a lot more like parasites in the sense that they're kind of taking over a host and they're using it to make more. Plants, they're not modal, right? They don't move. So they just need help. They need intermediaries to reproduce for the most part. Okay. So fruit, we've already talked about it a bit more, but here's really putting it just in high contrast. The fruit, an ovary where the zygote swells up and becomes a fruit. The petals and other parts of the flower fall off, so only the fruit is left. So what is a fruit? A fruit is essentially a ripened ovary. So it's literally a reproductive structure, like when the baby grows, the baby's growing inside the uterus, and the fruit, the seed is growing inside the ovary. So we're essentially eating the place where the baby's being made. The function then of fruit is twofold. First, it's acting as a way of seed transportation, right? It's like waiting for something to eat it so that it can be pooped out and then grow. But it also protects the seed. Because think of it this way, think of like an apple tree, right? So the seed inside the apple is kind of hard to get to. You got to really eat it to get in there. So let's say that apple falls down on the ground. If it was not protected by the fruit, it would be kind of exposed to the elements. Maybe it wouldn't get enough moisture. Maybe it wouldn't, maybe get like stepped on or pierced or cut in half. The apple kind of keeps it in like a cocoon until it's ready to be eaten. Then it can be planted. So functions as protection, functions as a type of transport.
The class cake is not working.
Yeah, we've heard some trouble with that, Jacob. So if you want to, you can go ahead and just take notes and turn that in, or you can do them digitally and just do like a Google Doc. Okay?
Mr.
Okay.
Martinez,
Mm-hmm.
you said that plants aren't like they can't move, but don't Venus flytraps move?
Do they move? What do you think?
Don't they move to like open up and catch a fly?
They do, but what? Look for a biological definition. So motility is the ability of a cell or organism to move of its own accord by expending energy. I would argue that when you're dealing with like a Venus flytrap, that Venus flytrap is not moving of its own accord. The Venus flytrap is like a bear trap, right? It's kind of set and it's waiting, and then when it's triggered, it moves. So that's kind of like a chemical cascade that causes it to close. The plant is not necessarily making a decision to close. What happens are it's triggered at a certain point. There's a differential in concentration of whatever, I think it's probably calcium, and that'll cause it to close. So it's in a response to something. The plant itself is not volition, like it has no volition to move. It's not like Aubrey 2, right, from Little Shop of Horrors. It's not like she can open and close her mouth at will. The Venus flytrap has to kind of sit and wait, and then when it's triggered, it can close because it's like a trap. So I would argue that it's still not necessarily modal. It's still not moving of its own accord. It's just kind of like a trap. Okay. Okay, so we got two questions here. What are the male-female reproductive structures, and where does fruit come from? We just talked about fruits. That one should be pretty easy to answer. And then what are the male and female reproductive structures? We have the pistil, which is going to be the female part. The pistil is made up of the stigma, the style, and the ovary, where the ovules are, which are the eggs. Then you have the stamen, which is going to be the male part, the anther, which has the pollen, and the filament, which holds up the anther. And there you go. Those are the male and female reproductive structures. We'll give it a second. Okay. And then where does fruit come from? Fertilization is when the pollen reaches the ovary. The seed is formed from fertilization, and fruit forms around the seed to protect it. It is a ripened ovary. Easy peasy, cucumber squeezy. A fly and a mosquito are two different things. A mosquito flies, but a fly is not a mosquito. Okay, any questions about this? All right, so we have a few minutes. What I want you to do first is to do your exit ticket. I'm sure you've noticed from some of your other teachers that are really pushing to get your exit tickets done. That's because we're having to kind of take attendance per class and have your exit tickets completed before class ends pretty much. So what I want you to do is you got a few minutes, you got like 10 minutes, work on your exit ticket. Once you finish your exit ticket, go ahead and start working on your plant project, or not start, hopefully you've started already. Continue working on your plant project. Remember that this is going to be due on Friday, the same day as your test. You'll have all week to work on it. I'll give you some time in class, just like right now. Remember that you're picking a plant, you're researching its scientific name, the biome it occupies, basically where it grows, its adaptations, the structures it has, and then you're going to be drawing it or visually recreating it. So if you want to do a painting, that's fine. If you want to do a model, that's fine. You want to do clay, that works, aluminum, whatever. I just want you to visually represent your flower or plant, I guess. And then lastly, what makes it unique. So this will be due, I guess not next Friday, it can be due this Friday. Oops, wrong one. So I'm going to go start checking your exit tickets because again, I have to keep a log of it. Expect this to be the new norm, that you're going to have to get your exit tickets done in a quick manner. You don't have all day to get it done anymore. You can't wait until you go home. You can't wait until 5. For those of you that have been having trouble with ClassKick, I encourage you to reach out to me if you can't see the questions. If you can see the questions but can't respond, write down your answers either on a sheet of paper or in the digital document, and you can get that to me. I apologize that we've been having trouble with ClassKick today. I'm not sure what happened. But yeah, I'll go and put some music on. You're working on your exit ticket. And then once you're finished with your exit ticket, you're moving on to your plant project. Okay, feel free to ask me any questions if you need help. Whoops, I didn't push that.
fast. I just had it happen the other day when I was walking into Starbucks.
I know,
and a girl
ads.
came up and goes, "How do
Don't
you
listen.
have such a good body?"
Don't listen. Yeah, and no relation today. As far as I know, we are not having any kind of intervention. I think this is going to be it for today. I apologize that ClassKit gave you guys so much trouble. If it makes you feel any better, I can't even find my information anymore. So I'm going to try and dig for it. But thank you guys for working hard. Thank you all for doing your best. If you send me a private message, I am reading those. So if you have trouble with ClassKit and we're not able to get the information, please make sure you get that to me by sending me a private message or a picture of your exit ticket data. So thank you to those of you who have sent it. guess I can go ahead and stop recording. Oop.